My dear friends, Jesus wept is a good answer to a trivia question in a pub quiz for what is the shortest verse in the Bible. John 11:35. Jesus wept. It's a very important verse because it emphasizes just how far Jesus shares in the common human lot, because it is part of the human condition that we suffer. And when we suffer, we cry, we mourn, we grieve. And Martha and Mary in Bethany are mourning the loss of their brother Lazarus. And Martha and Mary come to Jesus and say, if you were here, if only you were here, if only, then we wouldn't have to suffer. There is something deeply human about this when we are in a situation of suffering, as indeed we are now. The cry goes up, O Lord, if only, why do we have to suffer? So how do Christians understand the nature of human suffering, this human condition? Well, philosophically, and putting this in some very simple, straightforward terms, there are three classic ways to understand evil and suffering. The first is simply to say, there is no meaning to be found here. This is a nihilist perspective. It's also something which is quite commonly associated with the new atheists, someone like Richard Dawkins, who would say that there is no meaning to be found. There is simply the random jostling of atoms and genes and slow evolution, which is red in tooth and claw. Charles Darwin, in his accounts, is quite moved sometimes by or challenged, I should say, rather than moved. He's challenged by the existence of what seems to be reckless suffering in the animal kingdom. So the first way to respond to the existence of suffering that we experience is to say, it's all meaningless, nothing matters. Let's just eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Needless to say, that's not the Christian response. A second response might be to say that good and evil are equal and opposite. This is associated with what St. Augustine used to believe before he was a Christian, Manichaeism or Gnosticism, that there is this eternal struggle between good and evil. Now, the trouble with that sort of understanding, as with nihilism, is that it's actually very difficult to live a coherent and integrated and meaningful life if you believe that there is simply this eternal equal struggle between good and evil. Why not support the evil side? It is, after all, important that we find a meaning, we find our own path through this. The Christian understanding is a third option beyond this nihilism or a sense of equality between good and evil. The Christian perspective says that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and it was good. And the evil comes in, as with the serpent in the garden, as something which breaks something which is fundamentally good. And the question then is, if something is broken, not fundamentally broken but damaged, how is it then fixed? And the Christian claim is that through Christ, God returns to the world, and the second Adam puts right the sin of the first, and that in Christ we take part in the healing of the world. What that means is that when we are in a situation where we are facing suffering, our job is to fight it. With all the resources that we have, we are to respond with compassion and address evil and slowly overcome it. Because what comes on with the Christian perspective on suffering is an assurance that we shall win, that evil does not have the last word, that in the end, as I've said before, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. The divine response is shown by Jesus when he goes to be with Martha and Mary. It says twice in the passage that Jesus was deeply moved, and it is his compassion that leads him to weep. God is with us. God suffers with us. Our promise is not that we will not suffer. We're actually told the opposite. But what we are told is that in the end we shall win. We're not told that we shall not weep, but we are told that in the end God will wipe away every tear from our eyes, that there will be no more crying, there will be no more mourning, for God himself will be with us. So in this time, as we walk as a community, as a society, as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, let's take encouragement from that truth, that although evil and suffering is present in our world, we can fight it, and in the end we shall win. Amen.